We're going to talk about building dApps on the Permaweb and the specific tools and tooling available for dApp developers. So let's dive in. I want all of our panelists to introduce themselves and talk about what they do. So we'll start with Weronika.
Hello, I'm Weronika. I'm an engineer at Akord, which is an end-to-end encrypted protocol and publishing tool for Arweave. And yes, so really thanks for having me. It's like my first panel and first time in the US, so a lot of firsts today. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. My name's Tate, focused on community labs where we're building tooling and infrastructure with the goal of helping Arweave get adopted. So.
Yes, my name is Nader. I'm the Developer Relations Director at Aave Companies and Lens Protocol, founder of Developer DAO, and I've been building on Arweave for about 1.5 years now and really, really love it. I'm basically an Arweave shill, but only because it's something that I've been able to build a lot of cool apps with, and I'm a developer of 11 years, so I'm really excited to be here.
Hey everyone, my name's Phil Mataras, founder of ArDrive and ARIO, longtime Arweave fan. At ArDrive and ARIO, we're building software and infrastructure with the simple goal of getting permanent storage in the hands of everyone. So excited to talk to you guys about decentralized apps today.
Yeah, I'm Greg, and I'm focused on creating really easy and ideally elegant entry points into the Permaweb, and focus on community, in-house product development, and agency work in the ecosystem.
So I'm going to start with Weronika to ask an Akord question. So in the grand scheme of things, Web 2 data storage is nascent, but the experience is what users expect. So how is Akord bridging the gap to bring the Web 3 utility of Arweave to consumers in a Web 2 fashion?
So thank you for that question. So to start, our app has an easy onboarding process with an email, a password, so something that people are familiar with. Then we provide a free storage to get you started. If needed, the users can do the top-ups with their credit card, and our hot wallet will cover the transaction fees. So it's really seamless. Then we have all the collaboration features, the chat, so you can upload files, put the revisions for it, then put a chat around it, and and all that with a beautiful design, which is a kind of my subjective opinion, but you can try it out for yourselves. And that's kudos to Pascal, our co-founder and designer. Yes, so maybe just to put a bit of the background for all of that. So I think what was important in the process of Akord building was that we started as being centralized. And basically, we wanted to have a seamless user experience. We wanted an app that is usable by anyone, regardless of their background. And of course, all of that with owning your data in mind. So we've put it up the stage for waiting for a right blockchain, and then we found out about Arweave, which was a perfect match. And gradually, little by little, we started to move into the decentralized world. So first the data, then the backend with the amazing help of Redstone Warp contracts that Marcin presented before. And the final piece to complete that picture is the app. So we call it Akord Explorer. So it's a decentralized app. So the users can really view their data even if Akord ceases to exist, which hopefully won't happen. But if that happens, the users still really own their data. So that was the philosophy.
So it seems like having an interface that is familiar and beautifully designed has been really helpful, and it helps with the adoption.
Yes, so I think just in the Web3 world, there's still this builder to builder logic. So in Akord, we really focused on the empathy for the user, to really open that for anyone. So basically, people are expecting some kind of features from Web 2. So we try to just make it as easy as possible for the newcomers to the Arweave ecosystem.
That's awesome. Great answer. Thank you. Great answer. So I got a question for Tate. So Community Labs has brought value to the Arweave ecosystem through RConnect, EXM, and Flex. And as a venture studio, do you look for anything specific when engaging with developers about building on the Permaweb? That's the first question. Then I'll ask you the second question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that at a high level, we look for passion. You know, we want to find people that are interested in the Permaweb and Arweave, not just because of you know, the opportunity to potentially start a business, but because of the actual underlying technology and passion for decentralization and care for, you know, a level of collaboration and camaraderie that already exists within the ecosystem. We want to try and do what we can to continue that mentality. So I would say that when we're looking for building teams around initiatives, it's very much an art and a science, and we're constantly iterating and learning in our process as we've been doing that over the past year or so. But generally, one of the trends is that the people on the team, we're very happy to say are passionate and care a lot about, you know, the Arweave ecosystem beyond just the work that they're doing themselves within it, but care for the entire ecosystem.
That's a good answer. Your origin story with Arweave is always intriguing. I always share it with people about during the COVID lockdown, how you had to study for a science test and how you discovered Arweave. I think do you want to share that story? Because I think it's a good one. Speaking of passion, not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, happy to. It's something that I'm a little bit embarrassed about, but you know, Arweave's very interesting to me because when I was looking at, I got into blockchain in 2017, was really just fascinated with the underlying technology. In late 2019, clicked on an ad on Brave that was talking about permanent data storage as a blockchain technology, and I was like, wow, you know, that's really interesting, but I don't have any immediate use cases for it right now at the time of clicking on the ad. My first use case, as Andrew mentioned, surfaced when I was in high school at the time in a biology class, and the principal decided that the class was too easy, and that the reason it was too easy was because the students had access to study guides before the test. And so the principal decided to ban the study guides from this class, even though all the prior years received these study guides. And so my grades like plummeted. You know, like these study guides, they were really helping me out, and so I was pretty upset about that. And uploaded the study guides. I got a hold of them from a friend that was of an older class, uploaded them to Google Drive, and of course, you know, people very much valued that and started sharing the Google Drive link. But the principal realized that these study guides were on this Google Drive, of which he was an account administrator, and deleted them. And so my first use case for Arweave, I guess, was uploading biology study guides to a place where they could never be deleted.
What would that be?
Arweave, yeah.
That's cool. And the second question, Tate. So what tooling is already built to power dApps, and what can come in the future when we look at Arweave as being more than just storage?
Yeah, so it's something that we've given a lot of thought to. I would say that a few years ago, USV posted this really good blog about FAT protocols and the FAT protocol thesis specifically, in that the way that people are building on blockchains is fundamentally different than the way people are building in Web 2, and the economic incentives and implications of that are also sort of flipped on their head, because with blockchains, value sort of accrues from at the top, the application layer, but it all sort of funnels down to the protocols that they're built on top of. Whereas in Web 2, that isn't really the case, because there aren't business models for things like HTTP. And so what we're really focused on doing is, you know, we spend a lot of time thinking about how can we build things on Arweave to make it more useful to developers. And what we're sort of arriving at is this thesis that that there exists this layer between the applications and the protocol itself, and that's this tooling layer. And we think that it actually fits pretty well in between the application layer and the protocol layer in the FAT protocol thesis. And so our biggest focus has been identifying ways of making it as easy as possible for developers to come into Arweave, get up to speed on the technology, and actually start building things on top of it. So one of our products is ArConnect, which is meant to be somewhat akin to like a MetaMask for Arweave, with the goal of making it as easy as possible for developers to integrate Arweave support into their own applications, as well as making it easy for users to actually use Arweave applications through something like ArConnect. Another thing that we're working on right now is called Execution Machine, which we're rapidly iterating on this idea, but right now in its current form, the idea is a tool that enables any developer in Web 2 to come into Web 3 without having to learn a new tech stack. And so we've sort of created this parallel between the way that people write smart contracts on Arweave and the way that people deploy serverless functions in Web 2. And so while the functions that people are able to deploy on Execution Machine aren't considered smart contracts right now, they're more like stateful serverless applications, which combines the concept of a database and a serverless API in Web 2. And the goal is that by building technology using Arweave that I'm biased, but we're hoping to make it more powerful than the combined tools in Web 2, we'd create a really strong on-ramp for people to come in and build on Arweave without actually having to learn a new tech stack. So ArConnect and Execution Machine are two of the products that we're working on right now. Ideating on quite a few other things. We're also working on an authentication protocol, which is purposed around removing the need for people to have wallets to interact with Arweave applications and using smart contracts that act on behalf of users rather than needing key files and those types of things. So these are the types of things that we're exploring right now. Very experimental, throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what'll stick, but that's where we are.
It's almost like you've built a lab for the community.
That's the goal. That's the goal.
Thank you. That's great. So Nader, so Lens is one of the major players in decentralized social media so far, and many people have tipped decentralized social media as an inflection point for Web3 adoption. So how do you see Arweave fitting into that stack where permanent storage may not be an ideal scenario for social media?
So you're asking, like, why would people use Arweave if they're building a social media application where you might not want permanence?
Yeah.
Well, I think it kind of depends on which part of the infrastructure like stack that you're talking about, I guess. With Lens, we are already seeing a lot of usage of Arweave with Bundler Network. We also have a lot of plans actually that haven't really been publicly rolled out where we're going to kind of double down on all of our integrations that we've had so far by kind of using Bundler and Arweave in an attempt to scale our infrastructure stack, period. But I mean, one of the value propositions I think for Web3 social in general is the idea that you have this idea of data ownership. And I don't think that's a good way to put it, to be honest, because I don't think ownership of things on the blockchain actually exists. Instead, it's more like permanence, because you can't go and delete it, you can't move it around per se, but it does stay there in general. So I think that for the use cases that we've seen so far with Lens is that if you store a post or something like that and you want it to be available forever, for instance, if I create a YouTube video, and when I say available, the UIs actually have this idea of a soft delete, which is kind of what you actually see in the Web 2 world anyway, because almost every big company that says they're deleting your data are actually just putting like a thing in their database that says don't show this. When in reality, a lot of times they keep it because they have compliance reasons and things like that. But basically, we have the same idea. We have essentially a soft delete. You can delete your posts and they won't show up in any UIs. But if you want to keep them there, then they are censorship resistant. And you create a single profile on one app. You grow your following, and there are now over 100 applications on Arweave. On Lens. But when someone picks up a new app they want to use, you automatically have your following there, and you don't have to kind of rebuild your audience across every single network. So Yeah, I mean, it's a trade-off though, because let's say you post something that you do want deleted. You know, Web3 social might not be the best place for that. But I think that the overall value proposition that people really like about Lens in particular is that it has the same properties of a traditional social media app, but it has more that you can't really get with centralized infrastructure. Stuff like being able to monetize a post directly. So if someone interacts with you, money goes directly into your wallet. There's no middle person. You don't have to kind of inbox someone and kind of negotiate some agreement if you want to do collaboration and get paid. There's an example where someone decided to quit their job and say, hey, I'm going to go work on Lens full time and build out a client-side application that's going to be all I do. If you want to support me, you can collect this post for like $2. They had over 12,000 people collect it, and in 5 seconds post, they made over $25,000. And then on top of that, you have all of the other stuff that you would get from a typical social network. So yeah, hopefully that wasn't like too like crazy of an answer, but in general, overall, we are using it a lot, and most of the people that are like using Web3 social kind of, I think, understand the trade-offs. So
it's like with great power comes great responsibility. I hear that a lot with Arweave. So it's like if you're going to use Lens, you have to make sure that what you're saying, or it's there, you know what I mean? Like that's the power that I guess we get to educate people about.
But I think that's also something to take into consideration about the internet, period. If you put something on the internet, you can't ever delete it and be 100% it's deleted. You can delete that thing, but you don't know if someone else has taken that and put it somewhere else. Like that's the idea. Like you put something out there, you can say I'm deleting it on my server, but who else has it? You don't know. So I think that the idea of deletion on the internet is often, not a real thing. There's this idea of the Streisand effect. If you want something to go away, it actually becomes like, bigger as well. So, that's beyond maybe this conversation.
The Streisand effect is a great story. I'm sure most of the people here know, but for perpetuity, share the history of that term, because that's a great story.
I mean, at least to what I understand, something went on the internet and Barbara Streisand didn't like it, so she wanted it to be deleted, so she made a big ordeal about it, and then therefore it became amplified like 100x, and everyone did see it that probably wouldn't have seen it.
It was like her house or something. She was like, I don't want my house on the internet. It's like a study guide. Once it's out, let's go. Great answer, thank you. So Phil, ArDrive is the only Arweave native mobile app on Android, and you recently published as a Permaweb app. What are the implications of having your dApp published permanently, and how did you do that?
Yeah, so there's definitely a few implications, and maybe before I get into that, when I first kind of discovered Arweave, I learned, okay, you could put any kind of data on it and it's stored forever, but that data could also be applications. And for ArDrive, something that was really important to me and to our team in the community at the start was, sure, your data isn't just permanently stored on Arweave, but you need to be able to access those files permanently in the same way. And we really wanted to make sure that, sure, again, your data can't be censored, but maybe somebody could do something to the team or coerce us to change the code or do something different in a way the community might not like. So, I think there's some big pros with having a decentralized app on Arweave. And I guess the first piece is really, well, it's immutable, it's time-stamped, it's tamper-proof, just like any of the other pieces of data or files that you might be uploading. So now users can basically go to your version of the app. They'll know that that app is going to react and have the same kind of business logic as it did the day before, because it cannot be changed. And if the developer team makes a new version of that application, users can choose, do I want to go to the new version because it's got some new features, or do I want to stay with the old version because maybe it's cheaper, or it works enough for me? So giving users choice, I think, is also a really positive thing for decentralized apps. For example, you have maybe a centralized app, the company makes an update, you're just kind of forced to take it. Maybe the third really pro about it is it's really easy to do with Arweave. There's lots of ways to do it. I'll talk about how I did it with ArDrive. But first and foremost, Arweave and Arweave gateways can serve pages and apps to clients and users, right? So ArDrive itself is a Flutter and Dart application. I think it all compiles down to JavaScript. So it was really easy for me to just take our code off of GitHub, build the latest version, open up ArDrive with my Arweave wallet that I didn't have to get permission from anyone to do that. I created a public drive, I uploaded that code, I created a manifest, which is a really awesome standard that the Arweave team put together way back, which again allows gateways to resolve these Arweave transaction IDs to paths, friendly paths, which applications need. And that was really it. So now when you browse to this singular transaction, for the manifest, it's going to reference the ArDrive app and load all those assets so you can log in, upload, download, share, all those things that you could do with ArDrive. And again, it's cool because I uploaded through ArDrive. It's all one layer, one bundle, all of the app code kind of atomically contained. So pretty neat. And we didn't do things like stamp it. That's something that you could do for apps that, again, who knows what that could unlock. As well as other things that we maybe heard today of like putting in a CID or something like that to really, content address an entire application. So cool things I think that could still be done with this model, but there are also maybe some risks or some, maybe downsides to having a dApp. So, maybe one of them is, well, if you're running your app on Google, for example, Firebase, they give you a quality of service, they give you an SLA. Sure, now you're posting it to a decentralized network. You're not going to have that unless you're running the thing yourself. It's just a difference. Maybe another challenge and something with ArDrive, for example, we're always iterating and improving it. When you upload that app to Arweave, well, it's locked in time. Any bugs, issues, those are also locked. If you have a security flaw or gap, well, that's immutable too. If your app is connecting to some third-party service, whether decentralized or centralized, and that service goes down, well, your app better be able to recover from those things and still work. So there's probably some extra development that might ultimately have to go into building a dApp on Arweave to just make it as permanent as possible, as long-lived as possible. Because again, maybe a browser is not going to be serving JavaScript in 50 years. Who knows? Like what clients will, or how they'll be able to interpret these things. So yeah, and again, for ArDrive, this is a big part of what we wanted to try to do at the start. And sure, the ArDrive web app is on there, but again, any kind of data can go onto Arweave. So we also uploaded, the ArDrive mobile app APK files. So again, those are there in case anybody needs to get an old version, or if something happens in the Google store and it gets censored, like you can always go here to get this version. And maybe the final thing that is important for these kinds of applications is how users verify them. And it was important for us to really communicate that we posted ArDrive and here's the official wallet and here's the official transaction, because what we don't want is someone to browse to an ArDrive lookalike, SchmarDrive or something like that. And sure, maybe the dev team copied our code, but they put something in so that when you upload your wallet or when you connect your wallet, it steals your keys, for example. So I think it's important for any of these dApps to be really verified by the community, the team. I know there's other protocols, Vouch, et cetera, could help with that process. But yeah, I think that's really needed to ensure dApps remain safe and as long-standing as possible.
That's a great answer. So it's like, I think the analogy is, like some hipsters, they're like, I like that album on vinyl. So in like 50 years, our grandkids or whatever might be like, I like the 2023 version of the ArDrive app. Let me use RFS in this way. So it creates a historical context that will always be there, and that's cool.
Yeah, historical context, provenance towards whoever uploaded that, and ultimately, user choice, right? You don't have to move forward with the app if you don't want to.
That's cool. Thank you. Great answer. Greg, Longview Labs. Here's my question for you. User adoption of Arweave has been growing steadily, and thanks to your efforts with dApps like Earnables to gamify the experience of exploring Arweave, and Fortify to help NFT creators move their metadata and images to Arweave from IPFS. So what does taking the long view, so to speak, of growing adoption look like from your perspective?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, Phil highlighted a bunch of things about the long view and long term. I think ArDrive and many others in the ecosystem are inherently long-term thinkers and doers. So I just want to make that statement in general. It's something that I've been attracted to, and I think many individuals probably here and listening online are attracted to, is this long-term perspective in a largely short-term world. And so thinking about long-term growth of the ecosystem, one area that I'll just emphasize here is actually emotion. Thinking about like family relationships and like growing adoption through this notion of long-term relationships and exemplifying that through entry points like apps and web experiences and so on. So one example with that is if you go to ELLA.social, you can check out an app that we're building, and the first version's out. You can basically just log into your Instagram, pick anything that you've posted on Instagram, and it'll go straight to the Permaweb. And I feel like when we think about long-term growth, we just kind of maybe go towards things that are long-term inherently, like family, and like the basics of our civilization and our relationships. And I think leaning into that is an area of emphasis that I personally like to see more of going forward, because there's this inherent value that over time, those family photos, those family stories, whatever it may be, increase in value. And it's beyond some speculative nature. It's family, it's love, it's relationships, it's community. And so I think for long-term growth, leaning into that is really important for us as a community, because we're providing something really extraordinary for communicating over long periods of time. And that's, I think, one area I see to further emphasize for the growth over long term.
That's a great answer. And I think you touched on something I think about a lot, because a lot of the Web 2 conversation is around the attention economy. But with Arweave, it's the question of like, what is the economy, like the spiritual economy of like why we care about something? What's bigger than us, and like what is the mark that humanity can leave that's not just, hey, I got 50 retweets of this Pepe meme. You know what I'm saying? Like when you were on the Rcast, it was really cool because I got this vibe that you have this positive perspective and you have the faith that like it's worth saving the story. And I think that's something beautiful about Arweave. I don't know if you care to comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll respond with the community, frankly. Again, I think that there's, I guess, a particular type of individual that thinks long term, and this community in particular is inherently that. And so I absolutely love this notion of, it's not like about pop and spark and like whatever. I think it's important to include that. The emphasis is about like, 10, 50, 100, 200 years from now. And that is just, it's an amazing philosophical foundation to work upon, and to connect with others that think well beyond our own life experience. And so, these are areas where I really love to explore and create upon, as far as an ideological framework.
It's great having that perspective. Thank you for being on the panel. Thank you to all our panelists for answering your individual questions. So here comes the full panel question. And I'm going to let you all answer as you wish and to discuss this topic. So permanent storage is just one option when it comes to data. What is it about the Arweave ecosystem that you think attracts builders to leverage the Permaweb for the dApps, which we kind of talked about, but why did you build or host your dApp on the Arweave, or why would someone want to do this? So whoever wants to answer.
I'll do it quickly. So there's like obviously my own bias and so on. It's just that there's an elegance with Arweave to not have the operational overhead of thinking about your next subscription payment for XYZ storage and so on is a beautiful thing. And so it enables individuals to focus on their building as opposed to their operational load. And that, to me, is a massive advancement for the expression of creativity. So now you can focus more on the thing that you want to create as opposed to the thing you need to operate, or figure out how to operate and figure out when your next payment is and how you're going to have a card that lasts for 50 years. All these types of things are a hassle, and there's just some amazing elegance to that. And I think that attracts a lot of builders once they understand and grasp the gravity of that.
Yeah, I think that has been the one thing that resonates the most with people once they actually, understand what it does. But I think one of the things that also excites me the most was like, I worked at AWS for 3.5 years, and AWS has over 200 and X services at this point. But I was around for at least, a few dozen of those launches, maybe 30 or 40 of those launches. And the more I was there, the longer, I was there, I started like understanding how all these services were built. And then you start realizing that all of these hundreds of services are built on a few underlying primitives that are just used in different ways over and over and over. And the underlying primitives were like S3 and they were EC2. And really that was about it. Like there's a few more, but those two alone were enough to build out hundreds of billions of dollars of value. And they were just reconfiguring those primitives in different ways and kind of building out other stuff obviously as well. But almost everything used those. And then when I started learning about Arweave, it kind of, to me, was a very close one-to-one mapping to what S3 was, but it also offered much, more, I would say, functionality in the sense of permanence that you just can't get. So with S3, people were storing websites there, they were storing files there, they were building things like Dropbox or whatever, just file systems, all types of stuff. And you can do the same thing with Arweave. You can, and you have all of those same things. So I think that as a primitive has sprung up all of these protocols that are here today, doing all kinds of like stuff beyond just storage. And that's kind of what excites me the most because it is such a strong foundation that you can do so much with. And we're starting to see a lot of that experimentation really here in the last year or so.
I mean, on top of that, I think that I really see an opportunity for us to be building tooling and infrastructure that's easier for developers to use than their Web 2 counterparts. Along with what Greg and Nader were saying, I really strongly believe that we can get there, and I think that a lot of teams in the ecosystem are taking passes at that. And so I'm really excited for the day that we actually can say that. Maybe some would say that day is today already, and it's just about getting that understanding to be more universal. But I think that we can make Arweave easier to use than Web 2.
I love that. I think that's like totally spot on. It's not just about like, permanence. It's actually augmenting the experience across the board. And I think that's just, again, something to lean into. It's not attempting to be Web 2. It's something onto itself entirely different. And arguably so more just beneficial for anyone that wants to build.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I mean, I think everyone here is like the ease of use of Arweave and the fact that you can kind of start with these basic building blocks and build on top of it is, I think, super powerful. And that also goes down to just the core protocol and I think the incentive itself. And maybe this isn't as easy for most people to understand, but again, for me, it's just such a simple model. It's a blockchain built for the specific purpose of storing data and incentivizing people to store it for a really long period of time. So I think that, it's like easy to use, lots of easy dev tools, like just the whole kind of stack is just around ease, I think. And again, developers coming into the ecosystem, you don't necessarily have to learn some other language or anything like that. Sure, there may be some things you might have to learn around transactions and mempools and block sizes, core concepts like that. But once you're through, it's just the possibilities on the platform are immense. And as the size of the weave grows, it kind of just opens up more possibilities for the data that's on it. And I think that, again, that's something maybe the community doesn't see for a few more years or whoever knows how long, but it's in public data lake, right? So lots of opportunities there to scan and learn, et cetera, from that kind of information.
Here's a question. What was the first thing any of you uploaded to Arweave? Mine was like this email list I've been collecting of people who listen to my music for like 20 years. It's like 30,000 emails, and I was like, I'm glad this is private. I'm glad I put it on a private drive. And but it was such a great moment because I was like, wow, I need this email list to like keep in touch with this community. Do you want to share the first thing you uploaded, unless it's secret?
Yeah, well, mine is secret, and it's also fine to share. I say secret because it's encrypted. It was actually just a photo of my wife and I's our wedding photo. And I bring that up because that ties into what I was talking about earlier. Like, it's emotional. It's something that you want to have around for future generations. And that was the first thing that I actually went to.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's like, for me, it was also like family heritage, we can say. Like, I put it my grandpa. He was a hippie engineer, living in Warsaw and learning in polytechnics, and then being a professor. So yeah, I put his photos from that era on Arweave through Akord. So
That's cool. That's a beautiful tribute to him. That's awesome.
Yeah, my first upload was all my Arweave key files. No, I'm just kidding. But in reality, I mean, similar to some of the other discussions, and maybe this is a thread between a lot of people, but that my first upload was personal, well, not my personal information, but videos of my old band playing in high school, right? So it was like a personal moment that I want to keep forever and share. So yeah, I'm wondering if that kind of personal attachment is the thing that gets a lot of people to stay for the long term. But yeah, music, that was what got me in it.
This question comes from Lorimer on YouTube. Do you think decentralized protocols and dApps should expect users to learn new concepts like wallets, or should we, as protocols and dApps, adapt to using existing things like OAuth to identify the user?
I can maybe start. I think it comes down to how decentralized do you want to be, right? How permissionless do you want to be? Do you want to rely on other authentication services? Sure, those might be trustworthy and valuable, but what happens if that goes down and your dApp is still living and now can't connect to the auth service? And that's also kind of in contrast, though, with, well, do you then have to educate everybody on wallets and tokens and all that stuff? And that is something we try to do with our products, and it is a continual challenge to onboard people. But personally, I do feel like there is some amount that people have to learn, and we are trying to change from Web 2 to Web 3, and that involves bringing your identity and bringing your keys and bringing that information and maybe taking the responsibility of managing it. So yeah, it's really finding the right balance, I think.
I kind of think that you need a little bit of both. I think that you don't want to say, okay, there's 7 billion people in the world, only about a few tens of thousands today understand blockchains, and therefore we're going to say in 10 years we're going to get there, and then we'll then start onboarding the rest of these people today, when all 7 billion of these people already understand how to use all these other apps they're using. So instead, I think obviously we want to get to that point of decentralization, and it's great, and we should always build those solutions, but there's also a lot of opportunity for what they're doing, stuff like an EXM, where all you need is an API key and you can start sending requests to Arweave. You don't have to understand wallets, you don't have to do any of that stuff. And that's really, I think, where the mass adoption will come. And then once those people start maybe learning the technology, they're gonna wanna understand it a little better. But the average person their attention is drawn into so many places, and there's so many really great and easy things to use. The value proposition of decentralization just doesn't resonate with most people, I don't think. It resonates with me, it resonates with everyone here probably, but it doesn't resonate to the average person. So I think just taking that into consideration when you're building a user experience is definitely important.
Yeah, I think we need all approaches, and there's different times for different things. Just one example, if you look at Coinbase, there's probably many individuals here that got their start in crypto and blockchain and so on from Coinbase, because they had a custodial wallet and it was really easy to use. And so I think the same thing can apply for all sorts of apps and dApps and everything else in between. The more the merrier, really, as far as approach, in my opinion.
It's interesting, when we've been talking with Strange Brew, who do the PR for Arweave, the best advice that we got, Anthony and I were on a call with them, and they were like, this whole narrative of Web 2 is evil, Web 3 is save the world, that dichotomy of good and bad is kind of too simplistic and doesn't really help our cause necessarily, because it polarizes people. But there are benefits to each, but yeah, we are all probably on the Web 3 side of things, but having that black and white perspective isn't necessarily that great. So Lorimer came with a good question on YouTube.
That was good.
Thanks, Lorimer. So, does anyone here have questions who's not watching us on YouTube, who's IRL? Oh, shoot. Yeah, do you want to come up and ask it on the mic, or I'll come to you?
Yeah, hi. So I guess my question is, when you're thinking about building on Arweave and kind of building on models that serve for more permanent storage without updatability on a single record, what do you think about, most developers come into it kind of like a Web 2 mindset of something like CRUD, where they imagine they're going to upload a data record and kind of update that data record. And I've explained Arweave to other devs, it's kind of been the biggest blocker. The event store data model is less commonly used. People obviously use event storage for things like likes and objects of that nature, but it's significantly less common. When it comes to using Arweave, instead of storing a single piece of data in perpetuity, but like actually building a dApp or kind of like a UI that uses Arweave with this data layer database. Like, what do you guys think is kind of like the blocker on communicating that event store idea, or kind of like putting it in a dev's head first?
No. I mean, I think that it's a very common problem. I think that we see right now in terms of people understanding how you can use Arweave and what it's good for. I think that a lot of there are multiple teams in the ecosystem right now that are actually their whole focus is solving that and making Arweave very easy to use as a database layer. Obviously, I'm biased. Execution Machine is aimed at solving that partially, but there are also some great teams even here that are focused on that. WeaveDB being one of them, Quill being a relational database, and so when I think about talking to other developers about using Arweave as a database, I talk less about Arweave, and I think I talk more about the specific products that are catered towards solving exactly those types of problems.
That's a great answer. I'm not going to expand upon that. But basically, I would just recommend also checking out maybe Warp or EXM or WeaveDB or one of those different solutions that basically does that, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things we had to do for ArDrive way at the start, because you're dealing with files and folders and drives, and because people like to change the names of things or make updates, we had to build our own data protocol called the Arweave file system. And in the example of maybe publishing an app, you upload all of your assets to a drive. Let's say you need to change just a CSS file. You can just update the copy of that CSS file. Sure, that original version is going to be there forever, and the manifest you might have created pointing to that first version of the app is always going to use that original CSS file. But with ArDrive and RFS, you do have the ability to just easily change that one thing, regenerate the whole manifest using all that existing data that is unchanged, and now you have a new version of the app. So again, really easy, no code needed to do something like that.
And I've experienced that directly. It's been a lot of fun to be able to just update sites super simply because of the work that you've done with RFS and team, of course. And yeah, to the other points here, there's all sorts of new databases coming out. I think HoloDB from First Batch was just released, I think, or announced yesterday. So yet again, another database for builders to manage these things.
Yeah, I mean, and one thing that we're doing with Lens and a lot of other developers are doing is like you just have a reference to something, and when you update it, you just update the reference. So the reference would be like the hash. So you would just kind of replace that, and then you have that stored on either some other network or some other way that you would like to do that, whatever, doesn't really matter. But you're just kind of updating the pointer, and then that actually is a good solution, I think.
So I was wondering if there's something we could solve once and for all. Does dApp have a capital A, or is it lowercase? Who thinks it has a capital A? I wrote this slide, so I'm biased, capital A. Who's trying to make it lowercase? You still get dApps from me. dApps.
Well, there's some that are removing the D and just calling them apps because we decentralize apps as apps.
Wow, so we just call them apps.
Wait,
say that again, Greg.
Well, no, I mean, there's a bit of a debate out there, too, of distinguishing it and removing that distinction because let's just call apps apps. And that, the intention of that is all apps going forward are decentralized is the idea.
I like that. Solved. Sorry, Google spell check. Okay, so final thoughts. We'll just pass the mic down. Anything else? Anything you guys want to shout out where we can follow you all and learn more about our awesome journeys? I'll pass the mic to Weronika.
Thank you. Yeah, so maybe just like to add final thing, it's like next to the app, we are also thinking about builders. So we are providing the builder tools like Akord.js. So that's like our core JS functionality, like the SDK to build on top of Akord protocol with the end-to-end encryption wrapped on and the work contracts inside of it. And also we have the command line interface to interact with Akord directly. So of course you can use our app, but we have also, you can do that also from the terminal. So if you want to upload larger files or maybe some folders, you can use that too. And yes, so if you have any questions, you can join us on Discord. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. How about you, Tate?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Community Labs on Twitter, at Community Labs, frankly. We're building, iterating rapidly, like to ideate with people. If you have ideas on ways of making Arweave easier to use for people, that's something that we really like to talk about. So simple as that, I guess. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Tate.
Yeah, thank you for having us. It's an honor to be here and be amongst like really amazing people. I'm Nader.Lens on Lens. I'm Dabit3 on GitHub, and I'm on Dabit3 on Twitter. I'm releasing a new project later today that's using Arweave for Sybil-resistant form creation using Gitcoin Passport, Next.js, and some other cool stuff. So look out for that if you're interested. And also I have probably 3 or 4 dozen Arweave projects. So if you're a builder, look at my GitHub and forks and stuff.
That's tight. How about you, Phil?
Yeah, I think Ariel said where you can find us before. ArDrive.io, AR.io. I'm not much on Twitter, but you can follow me, Volanarios, or join the Discord. Hit me up with the DM. Love to help anyone out build their app or just use ArDrive. And yeah, if you're interested in participating in this new gateway network, keep your eyes peeled. Later this month, maybe we're opening up the floodgates there, allowing people to run a node themselves. So really looking forward to that. And yeah, again, I've been in the ecosystem maybe for 2.5 years, and this is my first time being on a stage talking to real people. So very happy to finally do this. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Phil, where can we see that transaction of your band's first video? Can we tweet that?
It's one of my old tweets, but yes, I can.
Is this
I can
the
maybe
start of
bring
So
that
we
back
got to
up.
find that. Oh,
It's still on ArDrive.
that was the energy of your metal coming
Yes.
through the speakers.
Something was happening there.
That's cool. Okay, we'll look to retweet that. Great.
Yeah, well, to echo what some of the other panelists here have said, yeah, like really honored to be here and appreciate all the work that Andrew and ARIO and everyone else that sponsored the event, Community Labs and so on. It really is cool to be here in person, a lot of fun. As far as keeping up with Longview Labs, you can just go to longviewlabs.co, and then you can also follow at @OnlyArweave, and those are 2 great places to stay in the loop. And yeah, those are the ideal spots.
That's what's up. Well, please give our amazing panelists a round of applause. They all address these challenging questions.